So working on the technique, working obviously an undercut, there's a disconnection going through. The key to it is that you're building up weight on a simple area, but then reducing weight across the curve of the head. So you're almost getting a slight mohawky type of feel through the top, but also maintaining length into perimeters. Texture plays a very important part, so once you've got the foundational shape right, you've got the foundation worked through, it's all about the texturizing technique to really break into the hair. It's then about product. We haven't spoken about product yet, but as the guy's drying, you'll start to see product being used to create the textures of today. Product is probably the main thing, or one of the main things that's changed the industry in the last 20 years. And the development of different technology within product allows us, as hairdressers, to create textures that once we couldn't create. And this type of texture, for example, working with the resurrection dust, the sea salts, the dry shampoos, give this very matte, dry, but very firm texture. It's still very touchable, you can still pick the hair up, it still feels like hair, but you get this kind of matte finish. And I think the combination with that texture, but plus the colour, is giving us that.
Okay, so looking at from a colour point of view, the inspiration came from a cartoonist called Enki Bilal. So Enki Bilal was a Parisian-based cartoonist, always concentrating on quite deep, quite dark, slaty kind of colours. So just really working more internally with the colour application, looking more at our violet tones, and again working with ambers, just to complement the texture that's almost like fur-like. So we're just working quite irregularly, quite dishevelled with the texture, just really working with the placement to complement the haircut.
Okay, thank you, Kylov. Next. Thank you, Enki. Let me introduce the Kylov. Told you I'd get it wrong. This is the Kylov. Complete contrast, yeah? Where we saw the texture of the Enki, we're starting to see something a lot more serious, a lot more linear, a lot more geometry worked into the shape. And this is a very clever little haircut, because it's a haircut that can move. She can either wear it down and all the focal point come on the fringe area, or there's a very subtle undercut being worked through the profile into the back. This will allow her to push it from one side to the other side. So she wants to cover the undercut up, she can just very cleverly work that back. Again, tight perimeters. Working, we never make anything too severe, but working it down fairly tight into the perimeter. Everything below the curve of the head, down on a diagonal, and then all of this area directed back to maintain the strength of the fringe. In the fringe, obviously that's an area that can change. We've actually cut up into really quite, we've done one section one way, on almost triangles being taken out, and another the other way. But as they fall together, they're still keeping a lot of weight to it. So that's where what we talk about personalising. When we make the haircut individual to the client, one of the things you should never do is copy any haircut exactly. Always use the inspiration that you'll see on the DVD, what the guys are talking about, but then always adapt it to the individual. Colour random.
Okay, so colour-wise, really taking inspiration from 1950s Prada prints. So the sectioning pattern is really influenced by those the fabrics and the colours within them. The sectioning pattern is basically a daisy shape. So we're working like a small section through the top and four almost like teardrop shapes off all of the sides. Looking really at sort of quite misty colours. So looking at sort of your violets again, but mainly the main internal colour is a denim blue, just to add strength to such a short, strong haircut.
Okay, thank you, Kylov. And next up we'll have Sylvette. Now Sylvette, a mid-length haircut, full of texture internally. So a lot of texture being created to maintain length and weight. The whole idea is to get height through into the crown area. Obviously the texture is important, that matte type of texture that we see, and also the playfulness. Obviously the colour, I'll let Adam talk about the colour, but it's the playfulness, the fun element that's coming through. If you imagine this haircut another colour, and maybe a slightly stronger fringe, you've got something very classic looking. But by taking a classic idea, just pushing it in one direction, bringing it back in another direction, we create the new. And that's exactly, when you come to our academies, what we'll be demonstrating, what we'll be taking you through in the workshops, in the afternoon sessions. When we get models in, we'll go through one by one to allow you to see exactly how these shapes are worked.
Okay, so with the colour, Francesco Fontana took inspiration from the Giles Deacon Spring Summer Show, which we saw a lot of colour placements in there of pastel blues, really soft pinks, peaches. So we've just worked again internal colour, so it's really so that the colour can fade out gradually. It's a little bit more playful, but the fact that it can fade out because it is internal, it just means that we don't get any demarcation lines, and we don't feel like the strength's been lost as the colour starts to fade. The haircut just kind of complements the colour, and they just both work together with the texture.
Okay, and our fourth model, this is called Vika, a haircut called Vika. It's a mix really, it's a real crossover of two things. It's glamour beats grunge, or Seattle grunge. If we go back to the early 90s of grunge and that kind of whole dressing down kind of period, but if we look at the glamour side of it, it's almost glamour gone wrong, and that's really the idea, that you're still working with texture, you're still working with the idea of dressing hair, but you're not perfecting. Obviously colour again becomes an important part, the texture becomes an important part of sending in that direction. So a very different direction this year from what we've seen in previous years. Obviously this looks great on longer hair. You know, somebody on the DVD, it's a really beautiful haircut, worked on very long hair. Your clients that are coming in with long hair, you still need ideas to be able to offer that. It's not all about cutting hair off. You know, as hairdressers we need to have ideas for every different type of client coming in. So this is our longer variation haircut called the Vika.
Okay, so with the colour, Victoria, who did the application and the technique, she took inspiration from a Dutch artist called Pierre Mondrian, and basically the colour palette, what he always worked with when he was working technique-wise, always very restricted. So we've just got the two colours working together, very carefully applied in a very quirky way. So we're just working more through the perimeter and just leaving the internal section out, just to have a really soft blonde working through the top.
And lastly, we have the Bowie. The Bowie, obviously the iconic figure of David Bowie. Almost like masculine, feminine, male meets girl. A haircut that can be worked, can cross the sexes, was the whole idea of it. It's actually very clever in the way that it's worked, because we talk about double baselines, but this is actually like a tri baseline. There's three different disconnections working through this particular shape, and the whole idea is allow her versatility. In the evening when she's dressed up to go out, she might work this kind of quiff, come wave idea running through the front. During the day it looks brilliant, just worked down, just blow dried out straight, and you get a multitude of texture that's worked through. So something that's very, very versatile. I think today our clients are dressing hair more than they've ever done. It's not about one haircut and that's it. It's about one haircut, but you advising them how to change. And obviously with the product and with a different change of finishing technique, that's how we create the different looks for our clients that are coming into the salon. So thank you, Bowie. You can go. So thank you very much, model. Oh, sorry. You did do colour.
Okay, so as you've seen before, technique-wise is exactly what I just showed you in a demonstration. So just looking at colour choice, the stronger the colour choice, the more obvious we can work. If you just look also at the model that Fabrice is working on, we've got the same technique, different colour palette, and you can see how strong the model is with the softer pinks, as opposed to the more natural, organic kind of feel to what Fabrice is working on.
Okay, thank you Adam, and thank you models, and we'll see the models later on. We'll bring them all up, so if you want to take pictures later on, they'll be coming back. Guys, can I just ask you all to move in a little bit, because we do get a bit of trouble with the traffic going past you at the back there. So if you can, come close. We're very friendly, honestly. Okay, I'm going to go over quick, let's just interrupt Bo and Fabrice, and then as they come into their finish, and finishing technique, but also the product.